Hey, Bruno.
Hello,
Here,
morning.
give me 1 second while I try to get situated with my browsers because there's a lot of them. Oh,
I love this new time. Thanks for
yeah.
setting up.
Yeah, actually, I need to remind people that it's happening right now.
Yeah.
Right now.
I see people joining. Oh, by
Yeah.
the way, I saw that it's, I don't know if you fixed the problem, but I saw that it's our Google Docs is still with no permission to edit, right?
Yeah, so the new one I created, and I just copied over the original one because we're changing names. I didn't want to change the name of the older file.
Yep.
So I just kind of, in the older file, I pointed to this new document, and then this file, I pointed to the old document. So that's why you see it that way. So
So
thanks.
what is the link to the new document?
If you clicked on it in the calendar invite,
Oh,
or
okay,
yeah,
let's see. Yeah.
yeah, I'll put it right here. So give me 1 second. That's the new one. And it should say OpenSSF Supply Chain Integrity Working Group Positioning Subproject. And thanks folks for joining. Give us 1 second while we get situated on our first SCI positioning subproject meeting and our new time. So let me try to share my Chrome browser. Okay, you should be able to see this, correct?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So if you can please sign in. And if you want to share something about yourself, by all means. And Nick, I don't think I've met you before, but welcome to the call.
Thank you.
So, and if you would like, you can obviously introduce yourself and what interests you about this particular subproject.
Of course. So hello, everyone. My name is Nick. I just joined the OSI, which is the Open Source Initiative. And we have a project called Clearly Defined. And I'm about 1 week into this new job, and I'm trying to learn what projects might be related to this. And I thought this meeting, and I want to learn a bit more about it.
Okay, related. Okay, well, welcome. And then
Thank you.
Harish, is that how you pronounce your name?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I just joined. Not sure if I know the agenda here.
Yeah, here.
Bring me up to speed. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let me. There you go. I put it in the chat again, the meeting notes. So essentially, this group was formerly known as the Salsa Positioning Group. Essentially, what we would do is we would try to educate, help with any sort of gap analysis for the salsa community. But as of yesterday, I've changed it because there was a vote earlier this month that we wanted to up-level the positioning group to include more than just salsa. So now this group is going to be focused on salsa, S2C2F, and fresca. So trying to make sure that we're all in alignment, that we identify gaps across each of the different projects or overlap. Also, presentations, etc. For example, the salsa, not the salsa, sorry, the OpenSSF. No, wrong one. Open Source Summit North America. Sorry. We submitted talks about salsa as part of the salsa positioning group. So as the positioning group, we worked together to figure out the abstract and the title, and then submit who would be talking, etc. So we did that as a group. And so we're representing the group, not necessarily our companies. And so that's the vision for this as well, but with a broader scope for Fresca and S2C2F.
All right.
Yeah. But welcome. I'm not sure if that interests you, or if we can be of service at some point in time, but we definitely want to evangelize all of these different sub-projects,
Perfect.
and educate the community on
So
what's coming up.
I mean, I have some idea of clearly defined, like I've been following this project specifically. So, I mean, I just wanted to just sort of like drop by and talk about the project, but I think generally I'm also an open source enthusiast. So this is probably a good place for me to be.
Got it. Okay.
So welcome.
Yes, welcome. Okay. Hi, Chris. Chris, hey, I don't know if you saw the link. I think you just joined. So I'm posting it multiple times just in case. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. This is a new time for us, so we might get some people that don't realize that there's a new time right now. But one of the first items that I would like to talk about is the sub-projects alignment. But I don't see the co-leads here. The co-leads are Jay from S2C2F, and then Fresca would be Mike Lieberman. He said he was going to be late. Oh, wait,
Oh.
I don't see you on the thing. Oh, dang, Zoom. Like I have to it didn't tell me that there was more people. Sorry. Hey, Jay.
Oh no,
Thanks for joining.
I literally just I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. I saw the meeting, then I didn't see it, and then I saw it again. I was like, oh crap.
It's a new time.
It is a new time. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you, Jay, for coming. So at least we have I know Mike is going to be late, and so I don't want to necessarily delay the topic, and we can get his feedback. But we have talked about how do we get the three sub-projects to align, so that we can better explain to the community the benefits of all three and how to use all three. But I actually don't know where we should start. And so that's kind of the first question, right? What would our scope be, and where do we start?
Well, the scope part is important, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the scope. Now, part of before we begin, let's talk about the recent blog that just came out around version 1 of Salsa, right?
Oh,
that
yes.
should have been done through us. I think we can all. I don't want to say through us, but we should have been involved in this inception, right? Because that's a blog. The whole rhyme and reason behind the positioning, SIG, is so that we have visibility over that kind of stuff, and we can see when that stuff is coming. We can have an opinion on it and things of that nature. So I think as far as scope is concerned, I think you hit the nail on the head. But if we're what's our topic of focus? How do we I don't want to say prevent that from happening, but how do we have a tighter, for instance, I found out about that from Melba, right? Like on Slack, hey Jay, you might want to be a part of this. Cool, let's jump in. I think we should look at that blog and see where that blog intersects, so that we can begin to tell the story or expand from that to how does the build track currently, what's that position against or in a how does that align with S2C2F? Where's S2C2F in that? Where's Fresca in that? And we could begin from there, right? Because that's out now, and that's an RC for version 1.0, which is great, and it's been received. But believe it or not, it's been received pretty well, right? A lot of the community that have seen that blog and that said, oh, we like the direction that this is heading in. Look, a few concerns around the source track and what the plan is around that, and Providence. So like, there's still some things to iron out, but the reception of that has been great. I think we can take that and then expand on that through the scope of making sure that Fresca and C2F and Salsa are aligned towards supply chain integrity working group as a whole, creating this supply chain security framework that's the framework that's spread across the OpenSSF. That's my 2 cents anyway. Please, anyone else chime in and agree, disagree, or please include your thoughts.
Yeah, so and for folks that want to speak after me, please do use the hand raise. I agree, right? I felt like we should have been more involved. I'm glad that Mark put it in our positioning channel, right, to get visibility. But I too was surprised that most of it was done. So then I started thinking, well, at what point is it the sub project's responsibility versus ours? Because we also don't want to be the gatekeepers. We do want to have input, right, to evangelize. So I think there's a fine balance there where, yes, we need to make sure that, we're not gating them. But for something as big as this, I do think there should have been more collaboration. So potentially that might be the key idea, is that if it's something major, right, that we as a positioning group should be involved to help unify the message across the board. But maybe if it's something minor, we can be reviewers, but we're not gatekeepers. I'm not sure how to navigate that, but it's just a thought.
Melba, just one question so I can understand the context now, because I think that I missed the meeting that you promoted this to position and sub project. The idea is now that it's not only Salsa, you are integrated as well as C2F and Fresca.
Correct.
What is the new charter of this group? Just to understand, it's just increase the
Correct. It's increasing
the angle.
Okay. Yeah, it's increasing to include it. So it's the same thing as Salsa, what we were doing before, but we're just adding 2 more groups to it.
Okay.
But the only reason why I agreed to it when it was voted yes was I needed representation from Fresca and representation from S2C2F consistently, because I don't join those meetings, right? I don't know a thing or two about those, right? At a high level, yes, but not enough. And so as long as that there is collaboration across the subgroups in this meeting, then it can work. Without that collaboration, it's not going to work. So that is essentially what this is. It's the same thing we're doing, just add 2 more projects.
Okay.
It should also be noted, right? So both Salsa and S2C2F are projects that are being driven towards specifications, right? And they're being driven in such a way that you're gaining adopters, you're identifying ways to get the word out, and you're doing all these different things. And because these projects are both being worked on in the OpenSSF underneath this working group, being worked on in tandem, then the conversations should not be siloed. Should bring those conversations together because they both feed off of one another. There's a bridging between the two. And that conversation, that message needs to be blasted out granted, the where each one is at specification wise, right? Where each one is at in development could be in different places depending upon, how they came in or what, the people involved in doing them. They could be in different places, but combining those efforts and making sure that, that they're aligned properly could only strengthen both of them, and it could only strengthen the message of what we're promoting and putting out from the OpenSSF. And this particular subgroup, when we talk about positioning them, we're talking about a few different things, right? So we're talking about how we send that message out to the industry at large, how we unify our messages within the OpenSSF, even the OpenSSF itself. How does the OpenSSF send this message out? So the message is coming out from a few different places. This can only make what we do stronger as a whole. Go ahead, Chris.
I'd like to disagree a little bit. I didn't and still don't see a need to discuss other OpenSSF projects in the 1.0 release candidate blog. I mean, from my point of view, that was an RFC that we posted on the blog instead of on GitHub. We weren't announcing the final release. We weren't talking about, really for that matter, how to use Salsa in a production deployment, which is where positioning with the other OpenSSF projects comes into play. This was saying, we have a thing, please look at it because we would like to move forward.
Got you. The only, I want to say the only kind of, not rebuttal necessarily, but the only thing, Salsa has evolved since it was brought in to the OpenSSF. It has evolved greatly, right? As a result of different pieces of information that's come out through its development. It didn't start out being separate tracks. It became separate tracks because there was clear identification of specific gaps. And the identification of those specific gaps came through bringing in S2C2F, through identifying gaps and securing the build pipelines came in from Fresca, through gaps in those other things. So while I agree with you, about the messaging in the blog, I would say that I believe still that you don't want to highlight and overemphasize, but there should have been a mention, at least where the work was being done, because of the changes from the original blog post that introduced Salsa to the community way back, even before the summer.
And Chris, I don't know if you wanted to respond before I comment.
I mean, my position is clear. It's a non sequitur is a non sequitur, regardless of the context that led to the 1.0 release candidate.
Okay. So, and thank you, Brandon. I didn't realize that as somebody presenting, you can't raise your hand. I think in WebEx I can, so I was very confused as to how to raise my hand. So I understand both points of views. I think, Chris, in terms of involvement pre this meeting, right? We were the Salsa positioning group. And it was a shame that the blog was created without collaborating with us, right? Because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to evangelize, right? I don't think you're part of the chats because I think it's only the SIG leads, but I said, hey, I was saying, are you ready for the RC, notification? What do I need to help with in terms of the 1.0 announcement, right? Because that's positioning. We're trying to help with that communication, with that evangelism. And so to not see that collaboration was a little disheartening, right? It could have just been an oversight, and that's fine. But that was our purpose. specifically for salsa. And today, right, we now have expanded scope, but for salsa specifically, it was very important for us to be part of that blog. So yeah, again, I understand both points, and we don't want to be a blocker necessarily. And there is a time and a place for mentioning other projects and when not to. But in this particular case, I think from my point of view, I think the collaboration, it didn't start with collaboration, right? It started with, okay, just give us feedback. And I think that is more of my concern. Okay. Okay, so let's, if we may, move on to another topic. So outside of maybe overlap or gap analysis, it sounds like blog communication, enablement, synergy amplification of that message sounds to be one area that we are thinking about. I know there's been talks about this whole supply chain security taxonomy. In the last monthly meeting for SCI, we were talking about, hey, we need a SCI taxonomy, and we need to make sure we're talking with the OpenSSF groups and stuff like that. So should that be part of our scope? And if not, right, I guess what would be the rebuttal for the SCI working group? Because I think that was a recommendation to tackle with the folks here.
Well, I can say offhand that, you know, to work on a supply chain taxonomy is definitely needed. I am working on a proposal to centralize that effort across the OpenSSF. That's something that I happen to be working on with Crow over in the best practices working group, just to centralize that taxonomy work so that everyone is speaking the same language. Taxonomy and personas. Everyone is speaking the same language across the OpenSSF.
Now, are you working on that from just in general terminology or specifically supply chain security?
Specifically supply chain security. I mean, supply chain security and all aspects of it. I mean, you know, keep in mind that, you know, supply chain security, open source security in general, this is across the OpenSSF. That's what the OpenSSF is here for. I'm working on this language that can be used across every working group, across every SIG, so that everyone is using the same language, same voice.
So is this a part of a different project or group that you're associated with?
Actually, the idea is that this goes under possibly a whole other working group that's focuses on centralized efforts across the OpenSSF. So rather than sticking this under, not even sticking it under best practices, sticking this under a whole separate working group, that this can be developed centrally. So all other working groups can converge into this effort, right? Everyone can come in and be a part of this effort, but then what comes out of it, the deliverable out of it, spreads out across the entirety of the OpenSSF so that everyone is speaking the same language. When we're developing guides, or when we're developing frameworks, or when we're developing, you know, projects, and when we're, you know, developing tooling, all this language goes in. All this language that's created goes into those efforts.
Okay, so what I'll do is I won't. We don't want to focus on that here. Then obviously, if we want to provide input, we can. But I'll remove that from the scope. I know that it was something that was mentioned.
While that's being developed, and this is something that I'm saying to me, I'm like, please, by all means, go ahead and keep creating, keep building, keep developing. And then what happens is that what gets created, built, to develop, to get pulled in. But I mean, the only downside to that is depending upon what the consensus is in that group around some of these terms, and we'll try to make sure that we keep a lot of the terms and a lot of definitions that have been developed, especially if they're similar in nature. We'll try to keep as much as we can. There will be some changes though, just for the sake of revising a lot of these efforts. The idea though is that like I said, same sheet of music, same language.
Okay. Any other things that aren't covered necessarily in terms of the salsa positioning that we might want to consider, given that we are including 2 other projects to the mix that maybe, from a scope perspective? No?
I was thinking with this increased scope, that of course, if you're thinking about missions, of course, it's just simplify communication. I mean, demystify the several projects. It looks like that they have very different objectives. One at the end, they have, of course, we are trying to tackle the same problem, but of course, each one it's strong in one and their own niche, of course, set together. So if you're thinking about the mission of the scope, it's a lot more about the simplification and and also identify gaps that exist among those projects, like work as a facilitator. So if you think that it's each one of those projects, they have something that is missing to be seamless connected with other projects, that I think that it's in the positioning. As we have this scope, we have to identify. Just think that I was thinking while everybody is talking, that probably we should have in the scope.
Okay. And did I capture that right? Again, I'm not very good at live note taking. I try.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Trying to think what else. The other thing, actually, we're kind of, it might be under this, communications. I'm thinking about this landing page, right, for the OpenSSF website. That does fall under our scope, but I'm wondering if that's all part of blog, web page / communications, right? Right. So enablement, the synergy, amplification, simplification. I can't spell. Vacation of blog, web page, and communications kind of thing, right? Okay. So then, trying to think about, where should we start? I do have a couple of ideas. One, which we were already working on because we were salsa positioning, is not only the landing page, but then there's these blog ideas, right? We know the RC blog for Salsa 1.0 launch has already happened. And obviously things might change, but we have that developer persona that we were already working on. And these were the topics that I presented last time. Not last time, maybe it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, on, hey, we can write about these types of things for the Salsa blog to help promote, the new 1.0, why certain things were done in more detail. Like, for example, why break up, build versus source, right? That could be a very lengthy blog on its own, talking about S-bombs versus salsa and the provenance. That's a huge question all the time. So it'd be good to have something out there on that. So just wanting to get the team's thought on, I guess, I think we have to focus on these blog ideas because we only have a certain amount of time. Hey, Mike, thanks for joining. And so if we are going to focus on these blogs, this would help with this landing page, right? If we figure out this landing page in time for the 1.0 launch, that would be fantastic, because then we can promote it on that landing page that is OpenSSF website. So thoughts on the priority of these blogs, if anybody's willing to be an owner. This one we already have an owner, so technically it was multiple, but I can kind of lead and try to clean up with help, right? So, oh, and Mike, this is the new link to the new document. So curious about if anybody, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just said thanks.
Oh, okay. So, and if oh, hey, Chris, go ahead.
I think that salsa tracks and why break up could potentially be a single blog post, just to reduce the amount of work we have to do.
Okay, so may be joined with breakup. Yeah, I think this also tracks. When I was thinking about it, was more of, hey, we thought of, you know, maybe having a vulnerability track or, you know, some of these other tracks. And, you know, we're thinking maybe the way this would work is, you know, somebody would submit blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, we're looking for ideas, almost like the RC blog, right? We're looking for feedback on, do you think this is valuable? That could be a sub of this, the why breakup, but it's not really about the tracks themselves. It's more about the value it provides being separate. So not sure what you think about that, Chris.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Mike?
Yeah, so one of the interesting things, I don't know, like I think, and once again, I don't know exactly how we want to split it up, but one of the things that has been coming up a little bit now that, once again, supply chain security is very overloaded. A lot of the various terms are very overloaded.
Yeah.
But there is an interesting depth and breadth conversation, which I think Salsa fits pretty well into. And I think that's, and to be clear, I think it kind of fits into somewhere in that Salsa tracks why breakup kind of conversation, right? Where there's like a left to right thing, which is sort of, you know, which I think that diagram that Isaac has is, which I think is really, really great. And I don't have it.
Oh, with the it was like 4 levels and the top is like policy and governance or something.
Yeah, so he has actually 2 of these interesting diagrams. One is a diagram, I'll look for it later. I think it's under the supply chain integrity working group somewhere, but he has that one where he talks about the hierarchy, right? Where, yeah, like at the bottom, you have your trust, like who do you trust? And it kind of goes up from there. And then I'll find some of the stuff later, but he has this thing where he has, actually, hold on, I have that diagram. Give me 1 second here.
No worries.
It's on the guac. I'll just post this in chat. It's a diagram in here. Oh, here it is. Yeah, so
Oh, yeah.
he has this diagram. He also had this other diagram, which he posted in one of the chats. I don't really remember where it is right this second, but he also has it in, he posted something in Twitter here, which this sort of diagram is kind of like the breadth conversation versus the depth conversation, right? So the depth conversation, right, is, you know, who do I trust, the trust foundation? And then based on that trust foundation, I want to make assertions about, you know, things, attestations, and sort of generate metadata that I can use. So this is stuff like Salsa. And that's kind of where Salsa fits. And then, you know, obviously then you have aggregation synthesis, which is saying, hey, can I take all that Salsa data along with other data like S2C2F and other sorts of metadata, SBOMs, and combine all that metadata into a better understanding? And then can I build policy on top of it? And then this diagram sort of talks about the end-to-end flow of what, you know, all this sort of stuff should look like, right? Where you have all of those attestations, but then you have policy at each level where you're going in and saying, okay, well, I'm checking my dependencies, right? And I'm checking my source, I'm checking my build, I'm doing then release management and so on. And I think that's where, like right now, the build is where Salsa has been focused. And then the additional thing here is we're now talking about source management. Like, is the code that I'm about to pull in, is the code, whoops, hey there, buddy. Is the code I'm about to pull in from my source code management, is it trusted? Is it code that's signed by the right parties? Has it gone through the right security scans and so on? That's kind of where this new Salsa source track comes in, but I think it kind of helps out with also some of the stuff that with like S2C2F of saying, hey, great, now that we've, let's say, done the right security scans and yada and generated an attestation, then this is how it gets consumed and so on. And I think that sort of thing of just talking about the breadth and depth and kind of explaining where we're sort of trying to fit into that breadth and depth conversation is, I think, really important to folks who are saying, hey, okay, cool, I want to adopt Salsa. How do I actually do that?
Tracks. Okay.
Yeah. Which I feel like now that I've spoke about this, I have a feeling I will probably
Write
take
about
on.
it.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you, Mike. Thank you. Okay. I have an interest in this one, but I would need a co-partner. The reason why I have an interest in this one is because I've drawn up some diagrams already for the case of breaking it up. And so I can just reuse some of that. So that's why I'm like, okay, and maybe I'll lead it or maybe I can co-lead it. But I do have some things from the source aspect and why it's important to break it up, because you can't just say you're SOSA level 4 compliant because your build is, right? You have to also consider source. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris. I didn't see your hand up.
I can partner on that one.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Okay. And I will warn you, I am better at visuals than I am at words. So I try to spit out my words as much as I can and write down, and then I have somebody wordsmith it for me because I'm not that great. Okay. The what's new, I think this is just a tweak. So I don't know who actually owns that one right now, if it's you, Chris, or if it's Mark or Josh. Josh, right? But that would just be a tweak. So this was before the blog was actually came out. I forget who brought this up, but someone was like, oh, why was SOSA level 2 skipped in the web page? And then there's also, why we didn't even finish SOSA level 4 or, put it into the 1.0. I know it's somewhat in the RC blog, but not sure if there's value in a blog dedicated to this.
Maybe not a blog, but update to the website. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, or at 4, because that it's the only in 3.
Yeah, I think highlighting on the website and then in the 1.0 release sort of blog, I think that would be just sort of highlighted like, hey, we got rid of Salsa level 4 for now as we're sort of building out some of this other stuff. We believe that, based on some of this stuff, right? Like it sounds like more and more, once again, I think some of this will be debated in some of the other meetings, but it sounds like Salsa 4 will most likely be a holistic Salsa level of like source to,
Yes.
build to whatever. And so we're trying to kind of say, hey, we're putting off that other stuff because it's going to require a bunch more, like it's going to require more than build. And we wanted to focus on build. And then as, in whatever Salsa 2, we'll probably have some more of that other stuff.
Okay, that makes sense. So then this would probably be maybe a tweak to the what's new to include a comment on it on this. Okay, so then that would be, well, the blog part would be, you know, the Chris, Mark, and Josh. But the website part, I'm guessing we're gonna have to open up a PR to fix the website, right? Not issue. PR. Okay, I don't know why everything's in bold. Trying to get rid of the bold, but it keeps coming up. Okay, so this, I'm gonna say, get rid of, I'm just gonna, low, not, did. Okay, and then there's these two. I feel like this might have to wait a bit. There is already an SSDF, NIST versus SALSA, and some other NIST documentation, or NIST references, I should say. And we might just need to tweak that blog to include this software component verification standard. So that's something that we talked about a few weeks ago. May need to tweak existing blog to incorporate the new CVS. I think everybody on this call knows about VEX and OpenVEX. Have you seen anybody get confused or ask about, well, how does SALSA deal with VEX or OpenVEX?
No.
No, yeah, I haven't seen anything about that. I've just seen people, I think, more generally confused about open, like VEX plus CVEs plus OpenVEX plus SALSA plus SBOMs. Yeah, I think there's folks who are just confused just about generally about the landscape, which I think is a bit beyond, which I think is like less about like the SALSA blog. That's where something like I can imagine a supply chain integrity positioning blog.
Yes.
Just about the landscape and saying, hey, here's how S2C2F fits, here's how SALSA fits, here's how the new VEX stuff fits.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree with Mike. I think a large part of the conversation isn't necessarily about versus, more about I mean, I hate saying this, but the newness of VEX documentations, the newness of SBOMs and how VEX documents and SBOMs work together, and the understanding of those against what they currently understand other things to be. I think once the not understanding comes in, with each one of these respective things, I think there's going to be less confusion.
Okay. So that brings up a good point. I'm gonna highlight that. And I can't remember that that framework that came out by, I think it was Aux Security. It was a few weeks ago.
I think they're calling it Oscar, OSCC &R or something like that. I know, and once again, I don't know many of these folks or what some of them are focused on. But I know that a few folks have sort of pointed out that it says it's an open standard, but nobody knows if there's community meetings. Nobody knows if there's like how to get in contact with anybody. There's a bunch of stuff about like, hey, it's an open framework for stuff, but there seems to be no information on how to get involved.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I know that has been coming up lately too. There was something else. Oh, and here, I think I've had it up over there. CVS.
CFAR. Is it CFAR too? What is this? There's another one. CSAF? CSAF.
Seth? Like that?
SAF, the SAF. Second. I got to go back into.
Yeah. So what I'll do is, yeah, so this one's a more detail. I think this is like a lower priority because, and I forget who, I think Emmy has the owns the blog on this one. Yeah, she's the one that submitted it, if I remember correctly. So I can talk to her about that. So does anyone want to own this one or? Oh, co-lead. Sorry, something fell. No hands. Okay. So I guess we'll leave that. We'll leave that one. You know, it's a lower priority. I think this also tracks as a high. This is a high, but it's pretty much done, right? And it's gonna get done. I'm not concerned about that one too. The developer persona. If I know Jay and Bruno, you were part of those discussions. What do you think about this blog? And where, if we should continue with it and tweak it, if we should just wait for the other ones to come out first and then do it.
I think maybe build is in build track is in a build track might be in a good enough place that we can actually write that. I think a large part of it was understanding where you know how they split up the tracks, what was coming out, where the release 1.0 is here. I think we may be in a good place to do that from a position of the 1.0 build. I don't feel comfortable doing that against something that's not complete yet. But 1.0 is it's fat. We're coming up on it. So I think we may be able to talk about it from a place of 1.0. I think that changes a bit. That could change a bit our scope of the blog, but I think that's something for us to sit down and discuss against 1.0. Read 1.0 a little bit, read into 1.0 a little bit more, find out developer personas in that, and then we can do that a little bit better.
I think that it's the right time to do.
Okay. So I updated that link. Yeah, I remember somebody created the original and we didn't know who had rights, so I just created another one.
Okay.
And this is kind of what we had so far. There goes that image, Mike. Essentially what this is trying to go after was why Salsa would be valuable for a developer to care enough about it, right? And so we're trying to just go after that persona because we want them to buy into this. And so if I think we might need to change a couple things, because I know while we were writing it,
Yeah,
I think it was a provenance that broke out in the middle of us writing this.
Well, it wasn't just that, it was the provenance, it was the tracks broke out. There was there were different level, the levels in the tracks got switched up. We identified one requirement in one level that was on one site that was contradictory to another one. There was a whole bunch of stuff that happened during that time.
Yeah, so we'll have to review it to see, is it aligned anymore? I think most of it is, but there's probably some parts that we'll have to rewrite or rethink about how we write about the new changes. Let me close this before I forget. So, I mean, this one, I think it was in fairly good shape. It was a bunch of us that contributed to it. It wasn't just, you can see all the different people. So now it would be SCI,
yeah.
positioning group. But yeah, I think this was a really good collaboration. across many different people.
So this is a
Um,
new, oh,
go
you
ahead.
already have the new link, right? Okay.
Yes, I added the new link. So if you clicked
Yeah.
on the old link before, it's been fixed. So I just fixed it right now. It should take you to the correct
Okay.
draft. So, okay, so why break up? I think this is a high priority too. And I'm wondering if this is a supply chain integrity blog too. SBOM versus PBOM versus MBOM versus SPDX versus versus provenance.
That's a lot. That's
yeah.
a lot.
So do you think this is a salsa or a supply chain integrity positioning blog?
Yeah, that would be definitely, I think, a supply chain integrity one. Also one where I be careful, it's going to be a contentious one.
Yeah,
I know.
You get me
I know.
started on it, don't you?
I know, but it's important, right? Because I'm hearing this constantly, right? People don't understand the differences, and they're constantly asking, which makes me also think about what other feedback have you seen from the community about the RC launch, right? If there's something persistent that keeps coming up, we'll probably want to write something about it or address it in the what's new blog. But I do think we should try to capture the common themes as we see them come in over the next couple of weeks to see how do we respond to it.
The one thing that keeps coming up, one thing I hear, and it's highlighted here, is why the breakup. That keeps coming up, but not just why the breakup. I think everyone agrees and is happy actually about the breakup, because there
Yes.
was a lot that went into the original, that the original spec that was like, oh, that this is a lot to consume in one time. But so the breakup is great. It's just, well, okay, so we have the build. Now, what exactly is the scope of the source going to be? I know that there was conversation about that, especially when it came to that actual step 2 part. I think we talked about that. That was a conversation we had yesterday, right?
Yesterday.
But
Yeah.
that step 2 part and drilling down into that, and that was a great unknown that needs to be known. Right, so I think that part, why the breakup, I think more of an emphasis on what is going to be the scope of that source part, or at least what is it currently. That could be something that's better understood. Other than that, I think, like I said, the reception has been actually quite decent.
Okay. Anybody else on the call have thoughts on what else? And feel free to talk about Fresca and S2C2F, because I have no clue on that. So if you think that there's something that the positioning group can help with,
Well, I mean, just an opening, I mean, hell, one opening blog that talks about all three together. That needs to be done. I mean, I don't think that has been done yet, and that definitely needs to be done, especially, being able to graphically depict where all that fits together.
okay, shout to get more hands on keyboard. So that's a good one. Will we put that in the SCI blog? I'm guessing, actually, is there an SCI blog versus a salsa?
So this is where some of it gets a little complicated due to some of the internal OpenSSF stuff. So this might go onto either an OpenSSF blog, or there's some back and forth when you get to the actual, like, hey, this is a working group that wants to release a blog versus this is a project that wants to release a blog. There's some stuff about potentially getting the TAC just sort of involved so that they're aware that, hey, you're about to, announce a thing. And there's some discussion about like something like a Salsa 1.0 announcement. Probably it's worthwhile to get the TAC involved just to make sure that everything, is good. But like there might be, there's certain things that folks want to maybe talk about that you don't need to get the TAC involved for like, hey, we're doing a little explainer on the different salsa levels. That probably doesn't need to involve the whole TAC, but I think some of that's still not quite clear. So it's probably worthwhile for us to sort of reach out to the TAC just to kind of double check with them.
Okay. Yeah, because technically we are a project, right? So do we have our own blog? Right? It's not a wide audience necessarily, but if we had to get around that, I mean, we are technically a project. So do we have a space that we could, release blogs on? I'm gonna guess no, given that we are new. Okay, so that's an action item. Let me, where do I put that? I'm just gonna highlight. To find out how do we publish blogs for overall SCI? Okay, I'm gonna highlight that so I don't forget. Okay, okay, so these are lower, this is lower, this is not needed. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3 blogs that are pretty high priority, and then this one is just a tweak, so I'm not counting that one. So 1, 2, 3 blogs, and actually this one's almost done. We just have to make sure that it still makes sense given the changes. Okay, I think we're in good shape. Anything else that folks want to cover? I know we only have 3 minutes left. Thoughts, comments, questions, concerns? Oh, I saw a hand up. Oh, Chris, hey.
Yeah, so these blog posts are all for the 1.0 release. Is the idea they come out at the same time, or are they going to be cascaded? Like, how much writing time do we have to work with?
Yeah, so the idea would be that we would do it one after the other, not necessarily all at the same time. But yes, it would be one after the other after the 1.0, right? Because we want to make sure if there's any changes as a result of the comments that we try to address it. And so once we start writing it and we think it's in an okay state for the next few weeks, then we can put a PR in, and then even if it's approved, we wouldn't necessarily push it until a previous blog might, have gone out as an example. So I'm thinking, obviously the what's new. Oh, I should probably put this first. Like this is the first one, right? That would come out. And then maybe this might be 2, the salsa tracks. And then maybe 3. And then maybe 4. I don't know. That's just an idea. So one after the other. But I don't know what spacing would be good. So like, one a day, one every other day, one every 3 days. I'm not sure what the cadence should be for these 4. Welcome input on that.
Weekly, maybe is a good one.
Now, do you think a month worth of waiting would be enough to answer these concerns?
Weekly.
Well, yeah, the weekly is, there's 4, so that would take a month, right?
Yeah, not too much.
So that's my only concern with that.
Yeah.
And then at one point, where's the other one? Where's the SBOM one? This is going to have to get addressed. People are going to be asking like crazy, right? So at some point, right, I think this is like number 5. Actually, wait, 5. Actually, we where's the opener? Opening blog. Okay, maybe this is number 5. Actually, this can be done in parallel. Oh, right. So this is the first SCI blog. Maybe we can do this fresco one because that's an easy. And then this SBOM one. And then maybe this 4. I'll try to put it in order so that way it's not confusing. 5. 1. So we got lots of blogs to write. And we need some owners. So please, 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 please volunteer. Oh, I do have to drop too. Sorry, I didn't realize the time. Thank you everyone for joining. Feel free to keep the conversation online. I'll try to do meeting notes later this evening once I'm back home. Okay. Thanks everyone. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.